Welcome back to QNN tonight. I'm Logan Reardon. Joining me today is the Quinnipiac Chronicle sports editor and men's basketball beat reporter, Brendan O'Sullivan. Brendan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Logan, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So we're going to talk a little bit of Quinnipiac men's basketball and obviously the situations that have been happening around the sports world. You were actually in Atlantic City for the MAC tournament just a few weeks ago. Feels like forever ago. What was the scene like in Atlantic City before everything started to go awry and everything started to fall apart?
I don't think anybody thought the MAC was going to get canceled. Like once we got there, everything started to fall down, and eventually the MAC just it was inevitable that it was going to cancel its tournament. But that day on Thursday was really just it felt like a dark day. Um, Everyone got there, and between reporters and staff, players, everybody's pretty much knew what was going to happen, even while the games were going on. I think it was Fairfield that was still playing. I could be wrong, but they were still playing, and everybody on the sideline was still talking about how there's no way they play another game. They're setting up press conferences afterwards to discuss the future of the tournament, which we knew what was going to be happening.
So how did everyone kind of start to learn? I guess everyone kind of went with the mindset that it was sort of inevitable that it was going to happen.
Yeah, the MAC was one of the last to cancel its tournaments. I think that, along with the MEAC, was I think those are the last two. So with everybody else canceling the tournaments, and even with like NBA suspending its season, and I don't know if the NHL is suspended at that time yet, but the whole sports world was really shutting down. So, like you said, it was inevitable that was going to happen. Plus, we got a notification from somewhere. I'm not sure if it was Mac Hoops or just the official Mac Twitter account that there's going to be a press conference at 2:30, which is supposed to be the time for Manhattan versus Quinnipiac women's basketball. So we knew the players weren't on the court for warm-ups, and the clock just never really started. It just had 20 minutes on it from the end of the first game, and we had a feeling there was no way they were going to continue playing this. I think it would be a shock if Rich Einzer came out and was like, "We're going to play and we're going to keep going." It would not be. It wouldn't be safe that way.
Yeah, so it's interesting that didn't really tell you guys anything, didn't tell you anything was canceled, just said that there was a press conference at the exact same time as games were supposed to be played. That's an interesting way to run a MAC tournament.
Yeah.
So I guess one kind of hypothetical question, Quinnipiac came in, the men's team, as the 5 seed, 15-15 on the season, pretty standard mediocre season looking at the record wise. How do you think they would have fared? They obviously had a first round matchup with Monmouth.
I think Monmouth would have been a tough challenge. Quinnipiac's been mediocre for most of the season. They've had their ups and they had their downs, but I think if they had a game to win, it would be against Monmouth. Even though, like I said, it would probably be a struggle to get there. I thought they were going to win that game, I think, but past Monmouth, I just didn't think they really had the talent or collective talent really to move on and win another couple of games. I think the top few seeds in the men's tournament were just really good.
Mm-hmm. And so looking at the season as a whole, they finished, like I said, 15-15. Last year they were 16-15. They lost Cam Young, who was far and away the best player in the conference. So to still finish with an average record like that, I guess says something. But would you categorize this as a successful season for Quinnipiac?
Without Cam Young, yeah, I'd say so. It's hard to lose your star player in any sport. So being able to lose him and still produce pretty much the same record just without him, it speaks a lot to like Rich and Marfo and people who just stepped up in his absence. I think they had a lot of development this year. Rich really took another step forward and looked like a first team All MAC player early in the season, and he dropped nearly 40 points Marfo is the nation's leading rebounder, and then you had other supporting role players like Tyrese Williams and Rigoni and Aaron Falzone, who all stepped up and played a big factor in that. Um, I would, yeah, it's not the season that I think people were expecting. It seemed like Baker's first year was a little bit difficult. Then he got a little bit better, and I think we expected a little bit more of a jump. But given that Cam Young was gone, I I think I would categorize this as a success.
And so I guess going into the season, there were a lot of unknowns with Cam gone. Who do you think impressed you the most with the way that they performed this season, I guess, relevant to their expectations coming in?
Um, Probably Matt Belong. I know he didn't play a lot towards the end of the season, but in the start of the season, he, Baker and himself, like Matt, were talking about how he's just going to be the spark plug off the bench. And he did exactly that at the start of the season. He got a lot of minutes as like a seventh, eighth man kind of role, and would just come in and score, just be the athletic guy he is and play some defense and do a little bit of everything on the floor. Um, at times, I remember I was at the Manhattan game at Manhattan, and he was the best player on the floor at that point. I don't think he's overall the best player on the team by any means, but like there's flashes of excellence that I could see him just continuously growing, and he was definitely a shining point in this season, I would guess.
And then I guess on the other end of the spectrum, were there anyone coming into the season that you kind of expected them to be a guy that didn't end up being a guy for them?
I guess Seth. And that's not because Seth wasn't bad. Like it's not like Seth was bad or even mediocre. Like it was just Kevin Marfo was so good and he played so many minutes, and I didn't follow the team too much last year. This is my first year covering him as a beat, so I didn't expect Marfo to step up and just be the nation's leading rebounder. I don't even know if anybody really expected that. And given that Seth is just so tall and he's 7'1" for a MAC player, that's kind of unheard of. So I expected him to come in and make more of a defensive impact, but he just didn't have the minutes to really play. He only played him out like 6 or 7 minutes a game, it seemed like, at some games, and I think he averaged like only like 3 points, which kind of it it speaks more volumes to Kevin's play than to his play, really.
Mm-hmm. And so the future of this team kind of in question. They had only one player that should have been leaving, a graduate student, Aaron Falzone, as you mentioned, but everyone else underclassmen. So on paper, you think that this team is kind of ready for a leap and ascension next year in the MAC, but we get the news that Kevin Marfo enters the transfer portal. Rich Kelly enters the transfer portal. Those are your top two guys in points and minutes. Your leading rebounder, your leading assist leader. What's the future of this team look like? Is this kind of a death sentence going forward for them next year?
Yeah, they're in trouble. They're definitely in trouble. Like I've been saying it for probably since the middle of the year this year. I was like, I could definitely see them winning the MAC next year. But if they don't win it next year, I don't know what's going to happen, because like I said, I do think Matt Blanc's great, and they have other freshmen. Savion Lewis has potential through the roof. Won Mr. Basketball in New York, and he's not like, how do I word it? He has Rich in front of him. Like he has a limit to what he can showcase, because Rich is just the star player, and it's hard to have both of them on the floor and have both of them be ball dominant and just dominate a game. But I think even with those two redshirt freshmen, now going to be redshirt sophomores next year, I don't know if there's enough talent collectively on the team between Rigoni and Tyrese Williams and Tyree Pickron. Losing Kelly and Marfo, it's going to be bad. I think it's a little bit easier on the guard perspective. Not saying that Rich Kelly is more replaceable, but they have more guards. Like they have Savion and they have Pickron. If you lose Marfo, you only have Seth Pinckney in the paint. You're also losing Nate Davis, who's, I believe, is the second tallest on the team. Rigoni can't play like a center position. He's a forward. So they're going to have to rely on Seth a lot. And he played 11.1 minutes per game this year. It's going to look more towards like 27, 28 minutes per game next year, and he's going to have to take a significant jump and get in the weight room big time.
Yeah, and I guess it's going to be year 4 for Baker Dunleavy, kind of when a coach should be finding their sweet spot. They've got all their guys into the system. It's all their recruits. Where do you think Baker goes from here? I mean, it's not looked as well as a lot of people thought it would when he came over from Villanova.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be tough. But I don't think people are going to – I don't think it would be fair for people. I'll say that because I don't know how people are going to judge this next season. But it wouldn't be fair to judge this next season super harshly. You're going to have to look for development in the season. You're going to have to look for some diamonds in the rough, I guess you would say. It's not going to be a flashy season where you see probably like 15 and 15 even, or a positive record at all. But if you get like even say an 8 and 23 record, for instance, but Savion and Matt Blanc look great, Tyrese looks great as a junior, then that's still a step forward, because you know they're going to take a significant step back. But if they can showcase that they still have talent on this team and people can step forward and step up in Richard Marfo's absence, then I think it'll be a positive light for Baker Dunleavy, even though it's not going to look pretty on his overall coaching record.
All right, Brendan, thank you for joining us. Join us again next week on QNN Tonight.